Hey guys, tonight we're time traveling to the land of golden tombs, sun-scorched gods and sand, so much sand. You wake up not in your soft, air-conditioned bedroom, but under a reed roof on the banks of the Nile. The air is thick and stinks a bit of fish. Your body is wrapped in something like an itchy napkin, and the sun is already glaring like it holds a grudge. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where the morning breeze is a mirage, and the sand has absolutely no chill. You stretch, regretting it immediately. Every joint feels like it's been kiln-baked overnight. The mat under you is damp with your own sweat, and mosquitoes are performing an aerial ballet around your ears. No pillows, no fans, no coffee. Just a linen sheet stuck to your back like ancient Velcro. And don't even think about staying in bed. The gods are watching. In fact, they're probably judging you already. Sloth is basically a cosmic crime in this land. If you don't get moving, you might offend Ra, the sun god, who's apparently already doing laps across the sky just to remind you how little time you have. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know what corner of the world you're sweating from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit up slowly, brushing sand from your face. It's in your eyelashes, your mouth, somehow behind your ears. The desert doesn't knock politely. It invites itself into everything. Your first task, not breakfast, not checking your messages. No, your first priority is figuring out how not to become a mummy before noon. You pull on your tunic linen, of course. It's breathable in theory, but when the air feels like molten soup, even the god's favorite fabric feels like a lie. Outside, the sky is blindingly blue, the kind that makes you squint until you're basically walking by sonar. Your neighbors are already up hauling baskets, lighting fires, sweeping dust that will just settle again 5 minutes later. It's a group effort to lose this battle against nature. As you step into the light, the ground nearly burns your feet. Sand reflects the sun like tiny mirrors, turning the whole world into one giant air fryer. And you're the main course. You try to stay in the shade, but what shade? Even the palm trees look exhausted, their fronds drooping, like they've given up, pretending they help. You're not royalty, obviously. If you were, you'd be waking up to scented oils and harp music. Instead, your alarm clock is a donkey braying, and the sizzle of dung bricks cooking on a makeshift stove. Glamorous. Someone shouts from a nearby hut, warning kids to stay out of the Nile unless they want to be nibbled by Sobek's children. Sobek, the crocodile god, has a real fan base down here. People leave offerings so the reptiles won't snack on their legs. It's a solid strategy worship through fear. And don't even think about complaining. That's basically treason. Pharaoh isn't just your king, he's a living god. Whining about your sunburn is like bad-mouthing the divine order of the universe. Better to grit your teeth, smear on some crocodile dung sunscreen. Yes, that was real, and pretend everything's fine. Now historians still argue whether the ancient Egyptians genuinely believed all of this cosmic hierarchy, or if they just played along to avoid getting smacked with a staff. Either way, the effect is the same. You obey. You sweat. You don't question why the sun is trying to incinerate your eyebrows. By mid-morning, your mouth already feels like a cat's tongue. You reach for water, hopefully from a clay jug, and not straight from the Nile. Parasites are a constant threat, and nobody wants to start their day with the gift of the river, which often includes bonus bacteria and maybe a surprise leech. Fun fact: children were sometimes deliberately infected with mild parasites to build up immunity. Just childhood things. The smells are intense and layered. Smoke from cooking fires, wet reeds, animal dung baking in the sun. Occasionally, a hint of perfume from someone richer than you floats by, a reminder that somewhere in this dusty oven, people are actually thriving. Your daily responsibilities are stacked like bricks in a pyramid: farming, hauling, grinding grain. You do it all. There's no such thing as specialization unless you're a scribe or a priest, and let's be real, your hieroglyphs look like a cat dance through spilled ink. No scrolls for you. As you go about your tasks, you see murals painted along the town walls. Gods with falcon heads, jackal heads, ibis heads, they're all watching, arms crossed like cosmic HR reps. And they all want something: obedience, prayers, food offerings, maybe the occasional goat. Religion isn't something you do on weekends here. It's the calendar, the news, the social media feed. Everything is judged, tallied, weighed against your eternal destiny. And yes, the heart scale thing, totally real in their belief. When you die, your heart is weighed against a feather, too heavy from sin. A monster named Emmet eats it, and poof, no afterlife. She's part lion, part hippo, part crocodile. Basically the worst parts of everything that could eat you. You pause to swat away a beetle crawling up your leg. Scarab beetles are sacred, sure, but not when they're making your shin their racetrack. You flick it gently, muttering an apology just in case. Offending a sacred insect might turn your next meal into locust soup. And speaking of food, you'll soon learn that your meals aren't about flavor. They're about not starving. But that's for tomorrow night. Tonight you stretch again, standing under a sun that's finally starting to dip, though it still roasts like it has something to prove. You made it through a day in the sand oven, just 19 more to go. You wake up again, or at least you try. It's more like regaining consciousness in a furnace. The sun hasn't even cleared the horizon, but your body already feels half-cooked. The straw mat beneath you is soaked with sweat, clinging to your back like a damp tortilla. Your linen sheet light and airy in theory is now a wrinkled flag of surrender plastered to your skin. There's no breeze, of course. The air is thick and unmoving like hot jelly. Every inhale feels like sipping on warm soup, and not the comforting kind, more like a broth made of sun and sand. Your first thought is it too early to crawl back into the Nile and hope the crocodiles take pity on me? Nope. No time for existential dread. You've got work, or at least chores, or something that requires movement, and movement means more sweat. You sit up and your hair sticks to your face. Your mouth tastes like you've been chewing on a mud brick. You reach for the water jug beside your bed. Lukewarm, of course, and splash your face. It does almost nothing except remind you how sticky everything is. You might as well bathe in molasses. The hut around you is simple mud brick walls, a thatched roof, a few clay pots, and enough sand on the floor to qualify as a beach. Sand is everywhere between your toes, behind your knees, in places sand should never be. It crept in overnight like a tiny, gritty burglar. Outside, the Nile gleams in the early light, but don't be fooled. That shimmer is a lie. The river may look serene, but it carries heat like a conveyor belt of misery. The morning chorus has begun, donkeys braying, geese honking, children already arguing over something probably involving sticks. In the distance, you hear the rhythmic clank of a grindstone. Someone's preparing breakfast. Or, as we'll get to later, something that claims to be food. But first, clothes. You peel off your crumpled linen sheet and wriggle into your daytime tunic, which is barely thicker than a handkerchief. Good news, it's breathable. Bad news, it also does nothing to block the sun, which is now climbing the sky, like a smug overlord with a magnifying glass. There's no privacy, not really. You duck behind a screen to change, but people walk by casually. Modesty's more about timing than actual secrecy. After all, you've probably seen every neighbor in various states of undress. It's too hot to care. And speaking of hot, your roof has already begun its daily transformation into an oven lid. It traps heat like a boss. You'd open a window, but those aren't a thing. Ventilation comes from holes in the walls or sheer optimism. Your first real task of the morning: head to the river, either to wash, to collect water, or to try not to lose a toe to a curious crocodile. You gather your clay jug and shuffle out into the village paths, where the ground is already hot enough to bake flatbread. You pass other sleepy-eyed souls, all wearing the same defeated expression. Yep, still alive. Unfortunately. Now here's the thing. Historians still argue whether the ancient Egyptians considered this heat just a background feature of life, or if they were in fact constantly annoyed by it, but too afraid of divine retribution to say anything out loud. Either way, the sun's power was respected and feared. Ra, the sun god, wasn't just illuminating your life. He was the life source, the bringer of light justice and second-degree sunburns. You squint up at the sky and wonder if he's mad at you personally. Someone nearby mutters a blessing as they fan themselves with a reed mat. You can't blame them. Superstition runs deep here. Even the weather feels like a divine mood swing. Too hot. Maybe you didn't honor Ra properly. Sandstorm incoming. Someone probably cursed their neighbor. By now, your back is damp again, and it's not even mid-morning. You wipe your forehead with a corner of your tunic and consider jumping into the Nile just to reset your body temperature. But that comes with its own dangers, and we'll talk about that soon. You pass a few market stalls setting up early. Dates, onions, dried fish. Nothing that screams refreshing breakfast. But that's life here. One man fans his goods furiously, trying to keep the flies off. It's a losing battle. The flies are as persistent as taxes, and twice as judgmental. Suddenly you hear shouting from the temple district. Priests are already out waving incense and chanting to wake up the gods, or maybe to keep them from punishing the entire town. You're not sure. The gods don't exactly leave comment cards. You shuffle past a group of women pounding grain in huge mortars. The thumping rhythm is oddly soothing, even as your temples throb in time with each beat. One of them glances up, offers a tired smile, and returns to her work. Her face glistens with sweat, but she doesn't slow down. They never do. And that's the thing, no one slows down. The heat doesn't excuse laziness. Your duty, whether to your family, your community, or the gods, doesn't take breaks for weather. Heat stroke isn't a medical emergency here, it's just a fact of life. You'll rest when you're dead, assuming the underworld has better climate control. Fringe fact for the day: ancient Egyptians sometimes kept pet monkeys, and at least one tomb shows a monkey holding a parasol over its owner. So yes, even back then, someone had air-conditioned monkey butlers. You finally make it to the riverbank. The sun is fully up now, reflecting off the water like liquid gold. You crouch to fill your jug, squinting for signs of movement, because crocodiles don't announce themselves. And they blend in scarily well. You spot what looks like a log, but you're not taking chances. You dip your jug, then back away quickly. Survival, like hydration, is a full-time job. As you start the walk back home, jug balanced on your hip, you can already feel the fabric of your tunic drying and stiffening with sweat. Every step kicks up little clouds of dust, which promptly glue themselves to your skin. You are now a walking sand sculpture. You glance at the sky again. No clouds, no mercy. Just another day in the sand oven. It's time for a bath. Because nothing says fresh start like dipping your entire body into what's essentially a slow-moving crocodile-infested biohazard. You shuffle toward the Nile again. This time, not to fetch water, but to cleanse yourself of last night's sweat and today's rapidly accumulating grime. The sun's already climbed into full oven broil mode, so at least the idea of submerging in water feels tempting. If you ignore the potential bitey roommates lurking below the surface. The bank is crowded. Everyone has the same idea. Men and women head to different sections more out of habit than modesty. Though modesty does exist here, it just depends on the heat index. Children splash about, freely shrieking with laughter and kicking up clouds of mud. Elders grumble from shaded perches, their feet soaking lazily in the shallows. A heron stares disdainfully at the whole affair neck, tilted like it's silently judging your hygiene choices. You step into the shallows, testing the water with your toes. It's warm, uncomfortably so. Less like a refreshing pool, more like bath water that's been used already by someone else. Still, you wade in. The river laps at your calves, then thighs. It's murky, full of silt, and swirling with mystery. Somewhere out there, a crocodile probably just rolled its eyes at your bravery. And now comes the scrub. Soap, don't be cute. Soap's for the wealthy or for rituals. What you have is sand, coarse, gritty, effective. It exfoliates like 1,000 tiny razors. You grab a handful from the riverbed and start rubbing it across your arms and legs, feeling it scrape away sweat, dead skin, and dignity in equal measure. It's like doing skincare with a cheese grater. Meanwhile, a pair of ibis birds wade nearby, stabbing the water with their curved beaks like it owes them money. The ibis is sacred, connected to Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing, so you try to look respectable as you scrub behind your ears. You imagine Thoth watching from some astral perch, nodding approvingly at your commitment to cleanliness, or maybe laughing. The gods have layers. And yes, everyone is watching. Bathing isn't private. It's a communal thing. Entire families gather by the water, chatting, gossiping, cleaning their bodies and their pots. Someone on the next rock over is shaving their head. Someone else is cleaning fish. You are now part of a soup made of hygiene chores and vague danger. Historians still argue whether these public Nile bathing sessions were more ritual than necessity, or just necessity dressed up as sacred routine. After all, cleanliness was tied to purity, and purity was tied to the gods. So in a way, bathing was both personal grooming and divine maintenance. If you skipped it, you weren't just stinky, you were spiritually suspect. But back to your own situation. You dunk your head. The water fills your ears. You stand up dripping, blinking silt from your eyes. Your tunic clings in a way that makes you wish linen weren't so honest. You do a little dance shuffle up the muddy slope, trying not to slip, because nothing ruins your morning like belly flopping in crocodile territory. A child nearby shouts and points a log just blinked. Everyone freezes. The stillness is sudden and total. Then someone throws a stick and the log lazily drifts away. Crisis averted, probably. You grab your towel or what passes for one, a rough cloth, that might also double as a table cover, and begin the drying ritual. Not that it helps. The sun's doing most of the work anyway. Within minutes, your skin is dry, tight, and slightly itchy. But hey, you're cleaner than before. Grittier, maybe, but cleaner. A strange aside, ancient Egyptians sometimes used a mixture of natron, a salty, naturally occurring compound, to clean themselves, especially when prepping a body for mummification. Basically a spiritual dry rub. You're thankful this isn't that kind of bath. At least not yet. As you head back to your hut, you feel the difference. Fresher, lighter, still hot, still dusty, but slightly less gross. The sand sticks less now. You catch your reflection in a puddle and realize you look okay. Tired, sure, and mildly traumatized by the near-croc experience, but functional. You pass a group of temple workers, all gleaming and oiled, heading towards the holy quarter. They bathe even more obsessively, because gods don't tolerate BO. If you're a priest, you're shaving twice a day, using incense as deodorant and scrubbing like your soul depends on it. Because in a way it does. You're not that committed. But you'll do your best not to offend any deities with your armpits. On the way back, you spot someone treating a cut with honey, a common antiseptic here. Simple, sticky, effective. And you file that away for later, just in case you earn a scratch during the day's work. You arrive home, skin tingling, feet gritty, and stomach growling. It's time to eat whatever passes for breakfast in a land where the phrase balanced diet mostly means don't die today. But for now, you've survived your bath. No crocodile bites, no parasite fevers. Just one more routine chore in a day filled with them. You dry your face one last time, take a breath, and brace yourself. Your stomach makes a sound that can only be described as a prehistoric growl. Bathing in the Nile might be spiritual, but it doesn't fill your belly. Time for breakfast, or more accurately, the edible equivalent of a dare. You duck into the cooking area, a corner of your home where the walls are streaked with soot and the air is thick with heat smoke and the faintly sour smell of fermenting grain. Someone's already lit the cooking fire. The bricks radiate heat like they're angry. A clay bowl of barley mash sits beside the hearth, bubbling sluggishly. That's the beer. Don't get too excited, it's not the fizzy amber stuff from your local pub. This beer is chunky. Yes, chunky. It's like drinking a wet loaf of bread that's been left to ferment in a sandbox. You grab a cup more out of necessity than desire and take a sip. It slides down your throat like lukewarm porridge with attitude. But here's the kicker, everybody drinks it. Men, women, kids. Why? Because it's safer than Nile water, and it's got calories. Plus, it dulls the constant buzz of heat and labor just a little. Cheers to survival. Historians still argue whether this beer was actually alcoholic enough to qualify as such by modern standards, or if it was just mildly fermented gruel. Either way, it's your breakfast beverage, and it's already settling into your gut like a brick. Now for the main course bread. You pull a flat loaf from the pile baked yesterday. There's no such thing as fresh bread, unless you count warm from the sun. It's dense, dry, and weirdly crunchy in parts. That crunch, it's not sesame seeds, it's sand. Because no matter how carefully you grind your grain, some grit always gets in. In fact, archaeologists have found ancient Egyptian teeth worn down flat from years of chewing sandy bread. Think of it as nature's dental plan: grind your food, grind your teeth, and eventually they match. Delicious. You tear off a piece and chew. Slowly, carefully. It's less a meal and more a test of jaw strength. The flavor is minimal. Flour, water, thyme, and a touch of char from the baking pit. No butter, no jam, no cinnamon. Just carbs and minerals, baby. There might be an onion or two on the side if you're lucky. Maybe some dried dates, if someone in your household got paid in food instead of linen this week. But usually it's bread and beer, beer and bread. It keeps you moving. It fills the hole. That's all it promises. You sit in the shade of your doorway, gnawing your way through the loaf while watching the village around you stir, fully awake. Kids dart between homes, chasing each other with sticks. Goats bleat from a pen. Somewhere nearby, a woman is yelling at her husband in tones that suggest even pharaohs get told off. Your stomach settles mildly content. The beer's doing its thing, taking the edge off hunger and convincing your body it's hydrated, even if the science says otherwise. You remember that time your cousin drank 6 cups and tried to fight a donkey. The donkey won. As you finish your meal, you notice a neighbor muttering a prayer before eating. A nod to the gods, especially Taweret, the protective hippo goddess of the home, who guards mothers' kitchens and meals. You follow suit just in case. The last thing you need is divine indigestion. Fun fact: Egyptians believed that meals weren't just fuel, they were symbolic. Bread was life, beer was joy. Together they were sacred offerings as well as daily staples. People left them in tombs for the dead so souls could snack in the afterlife. Imagine haunting your own burial chamber because someone forgot to leave the barley loaf. A small breeze picks up, barely enough to rustle the palm fronds overhead. You close your eyes for a moment, savoring the illusion of coolness. But then the smoke from the hearth wafts into your face, stinging your eyes and yanking you back to reality. You glance down at the last chunk of bread. It's gone hard already. You chew through it anyway because waste is not an option. Food is labor. Someone, maybe even you, pounded that grain by hand, sifted it, kneaded it, baked it. Every bite is work compressed. You rinse your hands with a bit of leftover beer. Why waste clean water? Then you rise joints creaking gut, gurgling and mind already turning to the rest of the day. The meal might have been bleak by modern standards, but it's done the job. You're full, or at least not empty. The sun is higher now. The shade is shrinking, and you've got fields to work, or bricks to haul, gods to please, and more sand to inhale. But that's life. One gritty bite at a time. Breakfast is over and the illusion of rest evaporates as quickly as the morning dew, which is to say it never existed. Now comes the real part of your day work. You're not royalty. You're not even a scribe or a priest. You're a laborer, maybe a farmer, maybe a builder. Either way, you belong to that vast sunburned class of people who keep the kingdom running while trying not to collapse from heat stroke. You step out into the glare, your stomach still sloshing with gritty beer, and your teeth faintly sore from chewing breakfast bread that may or may not have doubled as roofing material. The path is already crowded with others like you trudging towards their assignments like ants with no choice. The sun hangs above you like an enormous judgmental boss who never takes a break. If you're on the agricultural side of things, your first stop is the fields, those rich, dark strips of land along the Nile that grow everything from wheat and barley to flax and onions. But the Nile giveth, and the Nile taketh away. Every year it floods, and you never quite know how generous or devastating it'll be. Some years it's a blessing, leaving behind fertile silt. Other years it drowns everything, or dries up too soon. Farming here isn't a job. It's a gamble with the gods. You grab your tools, nothing fancy, a wooden hoe, a sickle edged with sharpened flint. Your hands, that's all you need. That and the patience of someone who's going to be stooped in the sun for hours, planting or harvesting under the watchful eye of a foreman who's only slightly less terrifying than the gods themselves. If you're not in the fields, you might be in construction. Maybe you're helping build a temple or a tomb or hauling stones for a nobleman's mansion. It's hard to tell if you're part of something glorious or just very sweaty decoration. Either way, it's a lot of lifting, a lot of pulling, and very little sympathy. There's no shade except what you cast yourself. No gloves, no back braces, just teamwork grit and the occasional shouted insult from a supervisor who hasn't smiled since the last good flood season. Complaining, don't even think about it. In this world, complaining isn't just bad manners, it's borderline blasphemy. Pharaoh is not just your political leader, he's a living god. He's the physical embodiment of Ma'at, the cosmic order. To whine about your aching feet or the fact that your friend got crushed by a stone block last week is to question the balance of the universe. You'd better smile and thank the gods it wasn't you. Historians still argue whether people actually believed Pharaoh was divine or if it was more of a cultural performance, a necessary fiction to keep things stable. Either way, the system works. You lift, you sweat, you obey. Because to do otherwise isn't just risky, it's treason. You pass a wall painting on the way to your site. It shows workers like you carrying baskets, cutting grain, building monuments. They all look happy, smiling under the sun, their eyes serene. You know better. The guy painting that mural probably never carried anything heavier than a paintbrush. Your own day unfolds in a blur of repetition. You bend, lift, carry, dump. You wipe sweat from your eyes, only for it to return a moment later. Your back protests, your shoulders ache, but you keep going. There's a rhythm to it. One you hate, but one your body knows now. At midday, there's a break. Kind of. You find a sliver of shade under a crumbling wall or a bush that's barely surviving. You chew on more bread, maybe an onion, maybe not. You sip your beer porridge and close your eyes, pretending for just a second that you're reclining in a palace with a palm frond waving overhead. Then someone yells, and it's back to work. Quirky fact for the day: ancient Egyptian labor crews sometimes had names like the Drunkards of Menkaure or the Friends of Khufu. Sounds like a band, but nope, just your fellow workers trying to get through the day with a little morale and a lot of sarcasm. Some graffiti even survives in pyramid tunnels, where workers etched doodles and jokes. Turns out sarcasm is timeless. By late afternoon, the sun starts its slow descent, but the heat doesn't relent. Your skin feels roasted. Your tunic is a salt-stained flag. You've drunk your fill of muddy beer, and your muscles are screaming in ways that suggest they'd like to unionize. You walk back home with the others, a slow parade of sunburned, sand-covered survivors. There's little conversation, just tired nods and the soft crunch of feet over dust. You pass the same gods, the same murals, the same guards who watch you like they're waiting for you to crack, and maybe for a second you almost do. You think about shouting into the sky, about asking why everything is so hard. But then you remember you're part of something bigger. That temple you're building, it's going to outlive you. That grain you're harvesting, it feeds the whole kingdom. You are a cog in the divine machine, and cogs don't get to quit. You return to your hut muscles, trembling mouth dry, but heart somehow steady. You've made it through another day. And tomorrow will be exactly the same. You wake up with a familiar taste in your mouth. Is it barley beer? Yesterday's onion? Nope, it's sand. Again. You sit up coughing lightly and flick a few grains off your tongue. Somehow, the desert managed to invade your mouth in the middle of the night. Either your dreams involved licking a pyramid, or the wind got feisty while you slept. Spoiler, it's always the wind. Sand is not an occasional visitor in your life. It is your roommate, your seasoning, your skincare routine. It is in your ears, under your toenails, and packed into the corner of your eye like it's trying to take up permanent residence. You shake out your tunic and a tiny dune spills onto the floor. You consider screaming, but your throat's too dry. The day starts like the last hot, loud, relentless, but this time there's wind. Not a cool breeze, mind you, but a gusty, aggressive blast that whips around corners and carries half the Sahara directly into your face. You blink, you spit, you squint. The wind doesn't care. It's here to exfoliate you whether you asked for it or not. As you step outside, you feel the sting immediately. Tiny grains pelt your cheeks like nature's sand blaster. You squint against the onslaught and wrap a cloth around your face. Everyone looks like they're preparing for battle, which isn't far off. Windstorms turn daily life into a siege. The worst part, there's no escaping it. Sand slips under doors through shutters around cracks in walls. You could seal your house with mud and prayers and it would still find a way in. It's in your water jug, your bedding, your soup. One time you bit into a date and felt the telltale crunch of sand. You don't even know how it got in there. The date was sealed. The sand is magic. You trudge to work, each step a squinting, blinking ordeal. Your eyes water reflexively, which only helps the sand stick more. Your lashes are tiny brooms sweeping grit across your corneas. And don't get too hopeful about a break. There are no sand days off. Pharaoh's temple won't build itself. Historians still argue whether the people of ancient Egypt just got used to this omnipresent dust, or if they cursed it daily, but knew better than to voice those curses out loud. Considering the lack of graffiti reading "sand sucks," it's likely they suffered in sandy silence. Today's task, grinding grain. Lucky you. You settle into position with a massive stone slab and a grindstone and begin the motion push, pull, crush, sift. It's repetitive, monotonous, and it adds more sand to your food. Because as you work, the wind blows across the open pile of grain. You try to shield it with your body, but the sand is clever. It finds the flour. It marries it. It becomes one with it. Later, when that flour becomes bread, it'll feel like you're chewing sandstone. Again, you rub your eyes with the back of your hand, then regret it immediately. Sand on sand violence. Your eyelids feel like they're made of wool. You blink furiously, trying to clear your vision, but all you get is a fresh dose of gritty tears. A neighbor walks past with a goat in tow, his turban wrapped so tightly that only his eyes are visible. He offers a knowing look, which in this climate is the same as saying, "Yup, still alive, barely." By midday, the wind has picked up to full chaos mode. It howls through alleyways, rattles rooftops, and kicks up little tornadoes of dust that dance across the fields like mischievous spirits. You see a group of children chasing one, laughing until it hits them in the face. Then the laughter stops. You take shelter behind a crumbling wall to drink your midday beer now with extra texture thanks to the sand that has settled on the surface. You skim it off with your finger. It doesn't help. You drink it anyway. Your insides are probably lined with sand by now. Maybe you're becoming part of the landscape. Quirky tidbit. There's some evidence that Egyptians used sand as part of their ancient toothpaste. Crushed pumice ashes, and you guessed it, sand, all mixed into a delightful dental scrub. So yes, even when they tried to fight sand, they used more sand. Later in the day, a gust of wind knocks over a basket of tools. You chase after a rolling hammer, squinting through the storm, muttering curses that probably offend at least 3 gods. You finally catch it, but not before sand finds its way under your tunic and into a place we won't describe in polite company. You dream of water, not beer, not Nile muck, real clean water. A bath that doesn't end with more grit than you started with. a breeze that cools instead of exfoliates, a meal without crunch. But this is Egypt. Sand is the wallpaper of your world. You don't live around it, you live in it. It's your floor, your ceiling, your fate. As the wind dies down near sunset, you return home. The hearth fire is still going, though. It's now half full of sand. You wipe your face with a damp cloth, watch it turn beige, and lay down on your mat. The sheet feels rougher than it did this morning. You know why. You close your eyes, but the sand is still there. You can feel it between your fingers, in your ears, on your scalp. You sigh. The breeze through the open roof stirs once more, and with it, surprise a fresh sprinkle of grit on your face. You do not move, you just let it settle, because fighting it is pointless. You open your eyes to the same old sky, brilliant blue, unbearably bright, and wonder just briefly if one of the gods is staring directly at you. Because that's the vibe here, you're never not being watched. Every move you make, every grain you grind, every time you stub your toe on a temple step, the gods see it all. Ancient Egypt isn't just a place. It's divine surveillance with no off switch. Today starts like the others, groggy, itchy, and sand enhanced. But as you sit up and stretch the stiffness from your limbs, you're reminded that you're not just surviving for yourself. You've got an entire cosmic bureaucracy to impress. Your life isn't about personal happiness or comfort. It's about upholding Mahat. That's the Egyptian concept of harmony and order. And it's not a casual lifestyle suggestion. It's the entire foundation of the universe. And if you mess it up, the gods might literally unmake the world. No pressure. You begin your morning with a short prayer, even if it's just a muttered chant, as you rinse your face with water that's definitely seen better days. Some folks go all out, kneeling, incense, elaborate rituals, but you keep it simple. The gods are powerful, sure, but they're also a bit touchy. You don't want to accidentally offend anyone by doing their offering routine out of order. That's how plagues start. Every deity has their domain. There's Ra, ruling the sun, Thoth, master of wisdom, Osiris, god of the dead, and Hathor, who covers love music and general good vibes. But there are also hundreds of others. Gods for scorpions, gods for beer, gods for protecting your eyebrows from windburn. Okay, that last one might be unofficial, but it wouldn't surprise you. As you head out for the day, you pass shrines built into the corners of homes and alleys. Little statues of Bastet the cat goddess are everywhere. Cats are sacred after all divine pest control. You nod politely to one statue as you walk by, just in case. The last thing you need is a cat-related curse. The village priest walks past, wearing robes that billow dramatically in the morning wind. His face is smeared with sacred oils, and he smells faintly of myrrh. He doesn't make eye contact. He's busy reciting invocations under his breath. He's got a temple to open, gods to wake, rituals to oversee. It's a full-time job, sometimes more. You arrive at your task site for the day, helping to clear rubble near a temple in progress. And immediately you're hit by a familiar feeling. Someone's watching. You glance up at the giant carved eye of Horus, staring down from the temple facade. Yep, being observed again. The eye of Horus is everywhere. It's like an ancient version of a security camera, except it's magical and might judge your soul later. As you lift stones and sweep debris, you remember what your mother used to say. Do your work like Osiris is watching. She wasn't kidding. If something went wrong, a tool breaking a pot, shattering a goat mysteriously escaping it, was often chalked up to divine displeasure. Better to whisper a quick apology to the appropriate God and move on. Nobody wants to be the reason the crops fail this year. Historians still argue whether all Egyptians genuinely felt this intense level of piety or whether some just played along. Because, well, what choice did they have? But even if it started as performance, the culture made sure belief became second nature. You live under the gaze of beings who might grant blessings or unleash frogs. It's best to behave. At midday, you take a break under a shaded awning near the temple wall. A group of workers are trading stories about someone who saw a statue blink. Another swears he heard a disembodied voice in the storeroom yesterday. These kinds of stories are everywhere, and whether or not you believe them, you listen. Just in case. You finish your bread, yes. It's still sandy. Wash it down with beer, still chunky, and get back to work. Someone accidentally drops a hammer, and it lands on a scarab beetle. Everyone gasps. Killing a sacred beetle is no small thing. The guy goes pale. One of the older workers mutters that he should visit a temple and make an offering, maybe even shave his head to show remorse. The man nods already, sweating for more than just the heat. Fun fact, the scarab beetle, which lays its eggs in rolling balls of dung, was seen as a symbol of rebirth and the daily journey of the sun across the sky. It's basically divine recycling. So yeah, step on one and you've possibly disrupted the sun's commute. Good luck sleeping after that. As you carry another load of rubble, you feel that gaze again. Not just the statues or the priests, something deeper. In this world, the afterlife isn't abstract. It's a daily goal. Everything you do is a tally on an invisible cosmic ledger. Speak the truth, work hard, honor the gods. Don't lie, steal, or covet your neighbor's donkey, because when you die, your heart is going to be weighed against a feather. And if it's heavier full of sin, you'll be fed to a monster, literally. The monster, by the way, is named Emmet. She's part crocodile, part lion, part hippo, basically. An all-star team of things that want to eat you. She waits at the scales of judgment, licking her chops for a chance to devour the unworthy. It's not exactly comforting bedtime imagery, but it does keep you honest. As the sun begins to dip, you finally head home. You pass a temple ceremony in progress, priests waving incense, chanting in rhythmic patterns, the air thick with perfume and power. You pause, watch for a moment, then keep walking. It's beautiful, yes, but also a reminder the gods are always near, always watching, and very, very involved. You arrive at your doorway, bow your head briefly to a household idol, and step inside. You made it through another day under divine observation. Your back aches, your skin itches, your lungs are half full of dust, but your soul hopefully still weighs less than a feather. Evening falls, but rest is a luxury you can't afford. Not when your little brother's got a fever, your neighbor's limping from a crushed toe, and your back feels like it's been beaten by a god with a palm branch. In ancient Egypt, pain is constant. And medicine is a weird cocktail of practicality, desperation, and divine guesswork. So you do what everyone does when something's wrong. You go find the SWNW. That's the healer part, doctor part, magician, full-time improviser. The hut is small and smells like a mix of incense rotting fruit and something vaguely animal. Inside the SWNW is grinding ingredients in a mortar with deep concentration, mumbling words that sound halfway between prayer and poetry. You wait. This isn't a place for impatience. Eventually, he waves you forward. You explain your brother's symptoms. Heat shakes too weak to work. The healer nods sagely, then starts mixing things with the intensity of a master chef who's lost the recipe. There's honey date pulp, a dash of moldy bread, and why not a dollop of cow dung? Yes, cow dung. It's antimicrobial. Probably, maybe, hopefully. You flinch as he stirs the mixture with a reed and pours it into a cup. He adds a bit of water and a charm, literally. He speaks a spell over it, calling on Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of healing and vengeance. If anyone can destroy illness, it's her, or destroy the patient. The line is fuzzy. He hands you the cup and tells you to have your brother drink it while sitting beneath a statue of Thoth, god of wisdom and medicine. You nod solemnly. You don't argue. Because here, healing isn't just about herbs and hope, it's about balance. Illness is disharmony. The body is out of sync with Mayat, and only divine intervention can fix it. Historians still argue how much these magical spells were meant to work psychologically versus supernaturally. Was it faith healing a placebo effect, or just their best guess at science with a side of spiritual flair? Either way, people got better sometimes. And when they didn't, well, the afterlife's got great reviews. You return home with the potion carefully shielding it from the wind. Your brother is sweating and shivering, curled on a mat. You lift his head, murmur something comforting, and help him drink. His face twists at the taste, but he drinks it all. You place a figurine of Thoth near his head, light a bit of incense, and pray. There's nothing else to do. While he sleeps, you rub your own sore back with an old remedy oil mixed with ground lotus petals. It smells nice at least, and your skin feels a little less like it's about to fall off. For muscle pain, you've also heard of using mashed leeks, warm stones, or a splint made from papyrus soaked in vinegar. You've tried them all. None of them work quickly, but they do distract you. There's a knock at the door. Your neighbor, the one with the crushed toe, has come limping in. She sits, pulls off her sandal, and reveals a foot that looks like it lost a fight with a chariot. You sigh and fetch a clean strip of linen. There's no antiseptic, but honey will do. It's naturally antibacterial. You smear some on the wound and wrap it tightly. For pain, a drink of beer, of course, or if she's lucky, a poppy infusion. The Egyptians knew about opium. They didn't know why it worked, but they knew it could turn screams into naps. You've only had it once after a bad fever, and it made the walls hum like bees. Effective, if a little terrifying. Quirky fact, ancient Egyptian medical texts, like the Ebers Papyrus, list over 700 remedies. Some are shockingly clever, like using moldy bread, which actually does contain penicillin-like fungi, while others are less so, like inserting crocodile dung to prevent pregnancy. Effective contraception? Probably not. Memorable? Absolutely. You glance over at your brother. He's sleeping now more peacefully. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. The gods or the dung or both, something's working, at least for tonight. You step outside for a moment of air. The stars are brilliant, scattered across the sky like someone flung silver dust. You whisper thanks to Sekhmet just in case. Gratitude can't hurt, not in this world. But as you turn to go back inside, you see a procession in the distance, torches flickering, priests in white robes, a patient being carried towards the temple, someone with a curse maybe, or a dream that revealed a god's anger. Temple healing is the last resort. The rituals are elaborate fasting, purification, sleeping near the altar, hoping the gods send a vision, or at least don't send a snake. You watch them disappear into the dark and wonder if you'll ever need that kind of help, or if your own meager offerings and charms will be enough to keep you and your family alive and balanced. You step back inside, check on your brother, and lie down beside him. Your joints crack, your muscles throb, and your nose itches with incense residue. You close your eyes and pray for rest, for healing, and for just one night without waking up covered in sand. Before the sun even rises, she's awake. Not because anyone told her to be, but because if she waits until the heat kicks in, everything takes twice as long. She moves quietly, stepping over her still sleeping children, past her husband snoring, with his arm draped across a broken straw mat, and into the morning half-light where the grindstone waits. You hear the rhythmic thump before you even get close. She's already started. A bowl of dried grain sits beside her and she's feeding it by hand into a massive stone mortar, using a heavy rock to crush it. Over and over, there's no escaping the sound. It's steady, almost hypnotic, like a heartbeat if a heartbeat could give you repetitive strain injury. This is just the beginning of her day. She'll grind enough flour for the morning bread, then start the dough. No mixer, no yeast packets, just instinct and biceps. She kneads shapes and shoves the loaves into a clay oven heated with dried dung. The bread comes out flat, dense, and dusted with ash, but it's food, and it will feed her family and maybe a neighbor if she's feeling generous. And here's the twist, this woman, she has rights, real ones. In ancient Egypt, women could own land, file lawsuits, inherit property, and even initiate divorce. She could sue her neighbor for stealing chickens. She could sell a piece of land and keep the money. She could theoretically run her own business. Historians love to point this out. It makes Egypt seem surprisingly progressive for the time. And it was legally. But legal doesn't mean easy. Because while the scrolls might say she has power, the sun, the sweat, and the never-ending to-do list tell a different story. You pass by her again an hour later. She's now by the river scrubbing clothes with sand and river water, surrounded by other women doing the same. They talk, of course, about their husbands, their kids, the neighbor's suspiciously fat goat. But they never stop working. There's always more to do. Children are everywhere. Not just hers, siblings, cousins, neighbor kids. They swarm like locusts, loud and sticky. She shoos one away from the cooking fire, lifts. Another off the roof, yells for a third to stop poking the cat. Childcare isn't a phase, it's a full-time, years-long, unpaid spiritual test. And when she finally gets a moment to sit down, someone needs help with weaving, or sewing, or an oil lamp that broke again. She repairs baskets, grinds pigments, fetches water, organizes offerings. If the gods need incense, guess who's boiling tree sap and mixing it with honey. If a priest visits, guess who's expected to present clean linens and snacks, as if she didn't just wrestle a goose out of the garden 5 minutes ago. Even childbirth, supposedly the most sacred life-giving act, is terrifying. There's no hospital, no epidural, just midwives, floor mats, and amulets. She clutches a carved figure of Taweret, the hippo goddess of childbirth, and prays not to die. The room is hot, the floor is hard, the danger is real. And if she makes it through, she's expected to bounce back to laundry and grinding like it was just a particularly dramatic sneeze. Quirky fact for the day: women in ancient Egypt used fertility tests involving onions. Place an onion in a specific place overnight. If your breath smelled like onion in the morning, congrats, you were fertile. It's science, but like the hope and hilarity kind. Despite everything, you notice something else about her. She carries herself with pride. When she speaks, others listen. She negotiates for better linen prices at the market. She argues politely but firmly with a priest who tries to take more incense than the offering warrants. She teaches her daughter how to read basic hieroglyphs, even though formal schooling is mostly reserved for boys. And you realize something: she doesn't rest much, but she has power. Real functional power. Not loud or showy, but embedded in the rhythm of life. Everyone depends on her. Everyone knows it. She may not sit on a throne, but she manages the kingdom of home, and she rules it well. By evening, she's still going, preparing dinner, checking on her son's cough, cleaning a cut on her husband's hand with honey and prayer. And then finally, when the kids are asleep and the fire is low, she sits by the door. Just sits. No grinding, no folding, no fixing. Her feet are swollen. Her hands are calloused. But she's alive. She did it again. You catch her looking at the stars, muttering a quiet thanks to Hathor, goddess of women, beauty, and joy. Not a big offering, just a whisper, a moment, her moment. You lie down not far from her home. You close your eyes, and you wonder how anyone could have the energy to do that all again tomorrow. She will, though, because she always does. You're woken not by the sun or the heat, but by drums. Slow, steady, echoing through the village like the heartbeat of something ancient and inevitable. Someone has died. You sit up, your body sore, and watch the procession forming. Men in linen kilts, women wailing dramatically, some professional mourners, paid in bread and beer to cry on command. A priest leads the way, his head shaved, carrying a bundle of sacred symbols, and behind them the body, wrapped, perfumed, and surrounded by amulets. In ancient Egypt, death isn't an end, it's an upgrade. A tricky, stressful upgrade that comes with trials, monsters, cosmic paperwork, and possibly a soul-eating hybrid beast. The deceased is on their way to begin the next leg of the journey, the one you've been preparing for since your first step. You've lived your life under the watchful eyes of the gods, hoping to earn the ultimate reward, eternal life. But first, your soul must survive the bureaucracy of the afterlife. And it's intense. First stop the Hall of Ma'at. There your heart is weighed against a feather, not metaphorically, literally. Your actual heart plucked from your chest placed on a golden scale. On the other side, a white ostrich feather representing truth, balance, and all-around good behavior. If your heart is lighter, you pass. If not, well, meet Amit. Amit isn't your average soul recycler. She's 1/3 lion, 1/3 hippo, 1/3 crocodile, and 100% terrifying. She lounges by the scales, ready to devour the hearts of the wicked. No second chances, no appeals court. One chomp and you're erased forever, not tortured, not exiled, gone. Historians still debate whether ancient Egyptians believed this part literally, or if it was more a moral guide. But to you, it's real. It's part of daily life. You can almost feel the feather every time you lie, every time you help a neighbor. Every deed gets tallied. It's cosmic accounting with very high stakes. The procession heads toward the embalmer's hut, where the real magic happens. The body is carefully unwrapped organs, removed brain through the nose, intestines packed in jars. The stomach goes in one canopic jar, the liver in another. The heart sometimes kept in, sometimes not. It depends on the spell book and who's interpreting it. You've heard of a guy who forgot the jars entirely. His soul got lost somewhere near the western desert. Classic mistake. Then comes the wrapping. Linen on linen on linen. Dozens of layers each inscribed with spells, names, and charms. Scarabs for protection. Ankhs for life. Eyes of Horus to watch over the journey. It takes days, weeks even. Poorer folks get less wrapping, but the principle is the same. Preserve the body so the soul recognizes it later. You've helped with a burial before, carried jars, recited prayers. You remember the scent, resin, salt, death, and something oddly sweet. Maybe it was the lotus petals tucked between the bandages, or maybe the gods were feeling generous that day. Today's procession winds its way past a local tomb, small but decorated. The deceased will be placed with their most valuable items, jewelry, tools, maybe a favorite chair, food and beer, of course, and figurines to work on their behalf in the afterlife. No one wants to spend eternity harvesting grain without help. You follow at a respectful distance. A priest chants from the Book of the Dead, which isn't really a book. It's more like a playlist of spells. You hear familiar lines: I have not stolen. I have not killed. I have not made anyone cry. It's like reading your own soul's resume, hoping the gods approve. Quirky fact, there was even a spell to keep your heart from testifying against you at the judgment. Basically, please don't rat me out, dear heart. Remember the good times. Ancient Egyptians didn't trust even their own organs when eternity was on the line. The ceremony concludes with the opening of the mouth ritual. A sacred blade touches the corpse's lips, nose, eyes, and ears, symbolically reopening the senses, so the spirit can eat, speak, and see in the afterlife. Without this, the soul could wander lost. You've seen it done before. It's equal parts eerie and awe-inspiring. As the body is lowered into the tomb, you step back and look at the sky. The sun is beginning its descent. In Egyptian belief, Ra journeys through the underworld each night, battling serpents and darkness to rise again in the morning. Maybe the soul of the departed will ride with him tonight, protected by spells and prayers, moving toward the field of reeds, the paradise where good souls rest. You walk home quietly. Everyone does. not out of fear or sadness, but out of respect. The journey continues, but not for the living. For now, you pass by a small shrine on your way, a worn statue of Osiris, the god of the dead, green-faced and calm. Someone has left a bowl of milk and a sprig of papyrus. A quiet thank you or a bribe. You nod at it just in case. Back at your home, the air is still. You lie down on your mat and stare at the ceiling, wondering what your own tomb will look like one day. If your soul will remember the right spells. If your heart will stay quiet. Sleep comes slowly but not heavily. Because here in ancient Egypt, even rest is a rehearsal for eternity. You wake up groggy, sticky, and with a headache that feels like it was handcrafted by an angry god with a hammer. Your back aches. Your mouth tastes like old barley. Your eyes are crusted shut from sand sleep in something you hope isn't spiritual punishment. Welcome to another day in ancient Egypt, a place that's beautiful, eternal, and 100% guaranteed to ruin any modern comfort seeker. Because let's be honest, you wouldn't last a day. Forget Wi-Fi. Forget air conditioning. Forget morning lattes, warm showers, or even toothpaste that doesn't contain powdered ash. You've got maybe 35 years on this earth if you're lucky. That's the life expectancy. And most of those years are spent either working, sweating, or recovering from some horrifying infection, or all three at the same time. You roll over on your mat and immediately regret it. Your muscles scream. Your joints crackle like dry reeds. You remember lifting stones yesterday. Or maybe it was grain sacks, or maybe a goat that did not want to cooperate. Either way, your body is keeping score. No modern medicine, no ibuprofen. You rub a bit of oil on your knee and mutter a prayer to a minor healing deity whose name you can't quite pronounce. It helps. A little. Probably psychosomatic, but you take what you can get. Your breakfast is the same again. Sanded bread and beer that drinks like wet cement. No variety. No fruit smoothie. No oat milk. Just carbs and a hope you won't get another stomach parasite. The bread feels particularly gritty today. You crunch through it like it owes you money. Then there's your hygiene routine, which is loose. You bathe in the Nile, sometimes. You scrub with sand, always. You might smear a bit of scented oil behind your ears if you're trying to impress someone, but mostly you just try not to smell worse than the person next to you. Toothpaste. Sure. There's a blend of crushed pumice myrrh and burnt eggshells. It tastes exactly as bad as it sounds. And yet without it, your teeth might rot right out of your head by your early 20s. Dental care is not a luxury here. It's a race against time and barley chaff. You pick your way through town to your work site, dodging puddles, animals, and the occasional cart. The streets are narrow, dusty, and filled with the kind of smells you try not to identify. There's something rotting near the butcher's stall. There's always something rotting. It's part of the landscape. You arrive at your assigned job, harvesting reeds, or dragging bricks, or repairing someone's broken roof. It barely matters. It's all manual, all exhausting, and all under the same unrelenting sun. Your tunic sticks to your back before the first hour's even done. You stop once to catch your breath, and someone barks at you to keep moving. Time is Ma'at, and Ma'at does not like slackers. You've got no sunscreen, no sunglasses. Your head covering is a scrap of linen that does its best, but the sun always finds the gaps. You envy the ibises, they at least get to stand in water all day. Historians still debate whether ancient Egyptians viewed their daily grind as divinely meaningful or just unavoidably exhausting. Either way, you keep moving. Because if you don't, you're either replaced or punished or worse, left out of the beer rations. And speaking of punishments, let's say you mess up. You damage someone's property or get into a fight. There's no court with a kindly judge. There's a tribunal of priests who consult divine scrolls, maybe throw in some dream interpretation, and then sentence you to something truly unpleasant. Beating, fines, maybe public shame via dung-related ceremony. There are no appealing to HR. Now imagine you get sick. Not a sniffle, something real, a fever that won't quit, a boil the size of a duck egg, your options, a poultice of honey and lizard tail, an incantation involving a frog's name whispered backward, or just lying there sweating and hoping someone leaves a bowl of water nearby. Fringe fact, if your illness involved male issues, some healers prescribed placing a warm crocodile heart on the belly. For female fertility, you guessed it, more crocodile dung. At this point, the crocodile population must have had opinions. By late afternoon, you're dizzy, dehydrated, and sunburned in weird patterns. You take a short break, sitting on a pile of bricks, wiping your face with your tunic. A beetle crawls up your leg. You let it. It might be sacred. You overhear someone talking about a neighbor who got bitten by a snake and didn't make it. You nod solemnly. That's just a Tuesday here. Life is fragile. One bad fall, one infected, cut one wrong ritual, and you're on your way to the afterlife, hopefully, assuming your heart cooperates. You remember a girl from your childhood. Got sick during the flood season. No herbs helped. She died before turning 10. Everyone said it was the God's will. Maybe it was. Or maybe she just needed clean water. You stagger home as the sky turns red and gold. The beauty of it stops you just for a moment. The sun setting behind the palm trees. The river gleaming like molten bronze. And you think this place is harsh, yes, but also timeless, immense, alive. You get to your hut and collapse on your mat. Your head spins. Your skin stings. Your soul aches. And still part of you feels lucky. Because you're here, you're still breathing, and tomorrow you'll do it again. You wouldn't last a day. Maybe not. But somehow you've lasted another one. The air feels different today, thicker, like it's holding its breath. You're not in Egypt anymore. You've drifted somehow quietly across time and oceans, and you wake up staring at stone that hums with something ancient and unsettling. Welcome to Teotihuacan. You're in the shadow of a temple, but this isn't the sleek, sun-polished elegance of the pyramids of Giza. This is rougher, hungrier, The temple of the feathered serpent looms above you, steep and sharp, its edges not worn, but watching. Carved serpent heads leer from the stairways, their mouths open mid-roar, their eyes wide and unblinking. There's no gold here, only stone blood and silence. You stand among the crowds. This is a ceremony, a big one, and it doesn't feel celebratory. There's no music, no dancing, just the slow rhythmic sound of drums, like the world's heart is about to stop. Everyone is pressed together, whispering, craning their necks to see the top of the steps. You've heard the rumors, everyone has, that this temple isn't just sacred, it's a mouth. A mouth that opens only for the gods, and only when fed. Beneath the stone, they say, lie the bones of hundreds, maybe more. Not buried by time, but placed. Purposefully, carefully. And now today someone will join them. A line of figures emerges, led by priests in feathered cloaks, faces painted in white and red. Behind them, the chosen. Not volunteers, not exactly, but selected, marked. Their bodies painted, their expressions tight. Some are warriors. Some are captives. Some are just unlucky. Historians still argue whether these sacrifices were always prisoners of war, or if locals occasionally volunteered themselves in hopes of cosmic favor. Either way, nobody's smiling. You feel the crowd tense as the priests begin to chant. The language is strange, older than Spanish, older than the city itself. You can't understand the words, but your bones recognize them. It's the language of offerings, of fear. The sacrifices are led up the steep stairs slowly. There are ropes, there are spears, there is no escape. At the top, an altar waits, stone worn smooth from use. A slab stained darker than the rest. You swallow hard, and then you hear it. A sound you'll never forget. Not a scream, screams are sharp. This is deeper. It's the sound of a body resisting and then not. The ceremony continues, methodical. The priests don't flinch. This isn't brutality to them. This is necessity. The gods need blood. The feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl demands balance. Life must fuel life. To keep the sun rising, the rains falling, the corn growing, there must be payment. Quirky and disturbing fact, recent excavations beneath the temple of the feathered serpent have uncovered more than 200 bodies arranged with eerie precision. Many had their hands bound. Some wore ceremonial necklaces made of human jawbones. The temple didn't hide its hunger, it displayed it. You edge away from the crowd, your stomach churning. This is too much. You weren't ready for this. The scale of it, the rawness, the way everyone seems to accept it. This is normal here. This is sacred. You look around and realize something else. No one is crying. This isn't a punishment, it's a transaction. And maybe to them it's beautiful, necessary, holy. But to you, it's terrifying. A child nearby is holding a carved toy serpent. His mother adjusts his cloak, murmurs, something about the gods watching. You wonder what he sees when he looks up at that temple. Glory, power, fear. Or all three knotted together like the feathered coils of the god himself. You try to understand, to really get it. In this city, at its height, one of the largest in the world, people lived with gods who walked among them in the form of volcanoes, storms, stars. Their worldview wasn't metaphor, it was literal. The cosmos was a machine, and blood was the oil. You shudder. The ceremony ends. The drums stop. The crowd begins to move again, quiet and efficient. Some head to the markets, others to their homes. Children skip down the temple steps, chattering like nothing unusual just happened. And maybe for them it didn't. You stay still for a while, staring up at the temple. The serpent heads catch the fading sunlight, their shadows stretching long and low across the courtyard. You can almost hear the stone whisper. The gods are still hungry. The sun rises over Teotihuacan, casting golden light across stone streets and step pyramids. But you don't feel warmth. You feel mystery. Because you're standing in one of the largest ancient cities ever built, and no one knows who built it, or what they called themselves. You wander its avenues wide, straight, and eerily perfect. The Avenue of the Dead stretches for miles, flanked by massive platforms and silent temples. There's no signage, no graffiti, no clue in sight. Just scale, precision, power. It's like the city sprang from the earth, fully formed, like the gods dropped it. Here shrugged and moved on. You ask someone what this place is called, and they shrug. That's the thing. Teotihuacan is an Aztec name given centuries later. It means the place where gods are born. Even the people who rediscovered it thought it was divine, abandoned by beings beyond comprehension. But for you walking its silent avenues, it doesn't feel like gods lived here. It feels like people did. People who ate, laughed, traded, argued, maybe stubbed their toes on the same stones you're stumbling over. They just left no voice behind. You pass murals, vibrant reds and blues, weathered but still defiant. They show jaguars, serpents, priests, and symbols you can't read. The artistry is stunning. These weren't rough cave doodles. These were deliberate detail meant to speak across centuries. But without the language, they're riddles. Historians still argue whether the people of Teotihuacan were one unified culture or a mix of groups under a central power. The city's layout suggests meticulous planning like urban design by a control freak. Water channels, apartment blocks, ceremonial spaces. It's all here, carved into the land with terrifying efficiency. That's right, apartments. This city wasn't all temples and elite compounds. It had blocks, neighborhoods where people lived in multifamily housing, plastered walls, courtyards, communal kitchens. It was modern in ways that feel almost futuristic. Some estimates put the population at 100,000, maybe more. That's massive, especially for a city with no written name. You sit for a moment in the shadow of a weathered stairway, watching vendors set up in the central plaza. Clay figurines, woven fabrics, obsidian's tools that catch the light and gleam like black mirrors. Trade was the city's lifeblood. Goods came from hundreds of miles away, turquoise from the north, shells from the south, cacao, feathers, incense. Teotihuacan was a magnet, and everyone came here to orbit it. A vendor offers you a figurine, round face, open arms, stylized headdress. It looks familiar and alien all at once. You hold it, and for a moment you imagine its maker sitting cross-legged in a workshop, carving tiny fingers with a stone blade. Maybe they were thinking of a child or a god, or just trying to get paid. The silence of this place isn't empty. It's full of lives that aren't gone just unnamed. You look around and realize you've been told stories of Rome, of Egypt, of China. But here the story's been muffled, half buried under centuries of volcanic ash and guesswork. Fun fact, archaeologists discovered that many of the buildings in Teotihuacan had colorful painted exteriors. Entire walls were once covered in images and symbols, making the city not gray and dry, but a vibrant walking mural. Now it's faded, but if you squint, you can still see flashes of color where the sun hasn't erased it entirely. You move through what was likely a marketplace. The space is open, bustling. Kids run by with straw balls laughing. A man haggles loudly over obsidian blades. A woman measures handfuls of cacao beans, the currency of the time. Life pulses here. The fact that no one knows their names doesn't mean they didn't live vividly. You turn a corner and nearly stumble into a small altar. It's simple. Stone. A few burned husks of offerings still cling to the edge. There's no sign explaining what it was for. No date, no name, but it feels sacred, personal. Like someone knelt here often, maybe every day, maybe their whole life. And that's the ache of Teotihuacan. It's massive, planned, mathematical. But it's also hauntingly anonymous. You're walking through a ghost town where no one whispers their name. Not because they didn't want to, but because time lost the echo. You pass a mural of a winged figure, arms raised, surrounded by stars. Maybe a priest, maybe a god, maybe a myth no one remembers. You stare, trying to read it, to understand what they were trying to say. But the language is gone. So instead, you listen to the wind, to your footsteps, to the silence that isn't really silent. And you realize something. Maybe the people of Teotihuacan didn't need their names carved in stone. Maybe the city is their name. A city too big to forget, too mysterious to explain. A place that eats time just like its temples eat offerings. You keep walking, past apartments, past murals, past lives. Teotihuacan doesn't tell you who it was. It just shows you what it left behind. You wake with a start because something's hissing. Not a snake in the grass, not a breeze through reeds. It's a sound coming from stone itself. From the carvings that spiral along the temple walls, teeth-bared feathers flared. The feathered serpent is everywhere in Teotihuacan. On staircases, door, lintels, pottery murals. Watching, waiting. You're not dealing with a single god with a tidy origin story. This is Quetzalcoatl, or maybe not yet, because in Teotihuacan, he's older, rawer, more elemental. He's not just a deity. He's a force. Feathered and serpentine, beautiful and terrifying. Life and death in one sinuous twist. You stand again in the temple courtyard, looking up at the open jaws of a stone serpent. The feathers curve around the eyes, detailed and symmetrical. But those teeth, they're sharp. Not symbolic, sharp. Whoever carved this didn't want you to feel safe. They wanted you to feel reverence with a hint of panic. In later Mesoamerican cultures, Quetzalcoatl becomes the bringer of knowledge, the god of wind, the inventor of calendars and corn. But here in Teotihuacan, he's not comforting. He demands blood. He receives it. He doesn't explain himself. You walk past a mural that shows the serpent coiled through fields, stars' hearts. He connects them all: birth, war, planting, dying. He is the cycle, not the choice. People kneel before him with hands lifted, eyes closed. You notice something: the hearts in their hands aren't symbolic. This God doesn't wait for you to die of old age. He wants part of you now. Historians still argue whether the feathered serpent at Teotihuacan is the same deity the Aztecs later worshipped. The forms are similar, the names shift, the meanings evolve, but the presence is the same. When you stand under his gaze, you feel seen, and not entirely in a good way. At the temple's peak, the priests prepare rituals, not just sacrifices, but fire ceremonies, smoke offerings, bloodlettings. People slash their ears, their tongues, their legs, offering the pain to the god. It's not punishment, it's participation. To keep the world spinning, you must give of yourself. You hear a whisper, old myth told in a newer tongue: the feathered serpent once bled himself to bring life to humans. So now humans bleed to thank him. Reciprocity, but with sharp edges. Fun fact: the priests believed their blood had cosmic value. They called it chalchihuatl, meaning precious water. So every drop wasn't just red, it was sacred currency. Given freely, demanded always. You notice another mural. It shows the serpent mid-flight, feathers arcing like solar flares. Below him, a figure falls, not violently, as if letting go. It's unclear whether the figure is dying or ascending. That's the ambiguity of this god. Is he devourer or redeemer? You climb the steps of the temple again slowly. They're steep, uneven, designed to humble. Halfway up, your knees shake. At the top, there's a small altar, blackened, worn, but intact. You kneel beside it, unsure why, just drawn. You see the horizon stretching in all directions: mountains, fields, haze. Teotihuacan was built here on purpose. The whole city aligns with astronomical points. This temple, it's no random hilltop shrine. It's a cosmic fulcrum, a place where the sky meets the bones of the earth. People come here not just to worship, but to connect to the cycles, to the blood, to the God who slithers through all beginnings and ends. You think back to the tunnels archaeologists discovered beneath the temple, twisting, shimmering, filled with mercury, obsidian, and golden orbs. Some believe they represent the underworld. Others think they were used for rituals meant to simulate death and rebirth. Either way, the implication is clear: death isn't the end, it's a door. And the serpent holds the key. The sun passes overhead. You notice how the temple casts a shadow, like a serpent itself coiling across the plaza, moving with the light. It's no accident. Nothing here is. The architecture, the art, the sacrifice, they're all messages. And the message is, life only matters because it ends. You descend the steps, heart beating fast. You don't know why. Maybe the heat, maybe the altitude, maybe the god is still watching. You pass a priest in bright feathers, face painted like fire. He nods once. You don't ask questions. A child offers you a carved serpent toy, tiny, smooth, feathered wings etched with care. You take it surprised and hand over a string of shells. An exchange, a ritual. You don't know the meaning. that doesn't mean it isn't real. That night you lie under the stars again. But they feel different now. Not random, not distant. Each one a point in the god's net. You close your eyes, still clutching the little serpent. He's not done with you. The sun hasn't risen yet, but you're already awake because the ground feels like it's humming. Not a sound exactly, but a vibration that runs up through your feet and into your chest. You're standing in a plaza lined with platforms, each one carved, measured and positioned so precisely that it doesn't feel built, it feels summoned. Everything here has an angle, a purpose, a line pointing to something else. And beneath it, death. Not chaotic, not accidental, designed. You move toward a pit discovered only recently by modern archaeologists deep beneath the temple of the feathered serpent. There they found the remains of more than 200 people, sacrificed, bound, buried, but not in a jumble, in a pattern. You close your eyes and try to picture it. Skeletons laid out with geometric clarity, heads facing certain directions, offerings placed with surgical care, beads, blades, obsidian shards, all arranged like pieces on a divine chessboard. This wasn't murder. This was math. It's chilling, but also genius. This society didn't just kill for religion. It engineered sacrifice to reflect the very order of the cosmos. Historians still argue whether the precision in these burials was about pleasing the gods or if it had an astronomical component. Some claim the layout aligns with constellations. Others see calendar references. Either way, one thing's clear: blood here wasn't spilled randomly. It was measured, plotted, charted. A sacred algorithm. You walk past an open courtyard where lines in the stone guide your feet. They subtly nudge you toward the center, not metaphorically, literally. The symmetry is irresistible. You step into the middle, and suddenly you're standing at the nexus of invisible forces. Temples ahead, mountains behind, stars above. You feel caught, like a pin on a map the gods forgot to fold. To the builders of Teotihuacan, the universe wasn't chaotic. It was architecture. The sun had a root, the moon a phase, the crops a rhythm, and so the rituals followed suit. Sacrifices weren't simply offerings. They were harmonies, played out in flesh and stone, timed to the movements of the heavens. You step into a subterranean passage, cool, narrow, echoing. This tunnel once led to a ceremonial chamber, a place of transformation. Some say initiates passed through it before becoming priests. Others whisper that victims walked here voluntarily, believing death would deliver them into cosmic alignment. You reach a small alcove and spot fragments of obsidian knives, razor thin, jet black. A nearby wall bears the faded remains of red paint circles and triangles, precise, deliberate. Blood was spilled here, but not as punishment. As art, as code. Quirky fact: obsidian volcanic glass was prized for its sharpness, finer than surgical steel. It could slice skin with almost no pressure. In Mesoamerican cultures, it wasn't just a weapon. It was a bridge between the body and the spirit, the human and the divine. You touch one of the altar stones. smooth, cold, somehow still humming. You imagine the rituals. A priest standing above arms, raise the crowd silent as geometry meets biology. It's disturbing, yes, but also fascinating. These people didn't fear death the way you do. They saw it as an equation. When the city needed rain, blood was the variable. When the calendar demanded renewal, hearts were the function. It sounds monstrous because you're from a world where death is avoided. They lived in a world where it was part of the architecture. You climb out of the tunnel and back into sunlight. The light slices across the plaza in golden lines, casting perfect shadows. Even the shadows here obey the design. The serpent heads seem to shift their eyes, flickering with reflected light. You wonder how many people stood here centuries ago, accepting their fate not with terror, but with purpose. A procession enters the plaza. Not modern tourists this time, but reenactors in ceremonial dress. Feathers, beads, drums. Their movements are slow, synchronized. Each step falls on invisible lines only they can see. You stand very still watching. They move in circles, then triangles, forming shapes with their bodies. It's dance, but it's also geometry. Ritual math in motion. A child nearby points to a map etched into the stone. You look closer, it's a city layout, but also a cosmogram. Teotihuacan wasn't just a place to live. It was a giant calendar, a spiritual calculator, a living diagram of the heavens. You glance up. The sun's at a precise point overhead. You step back and suddenly the whole plaza seems to tilt to a line. For just a second, everything clicks, the steps, the sky, the shadows. It's like standing inside a clock that's been waiting centuries to chime. You understand then. Sacrifice wasn't cruelty. It was continuity. The blood kept the gears turning, not just symbolically, literally. You feel the air shift. The sun passes its mark. The plaza relaxes. And so do you. This city doesn't just live by design. It dies by it too. The city is quiet again, but it's not peace. It's power holding its breath. You can feel it in the stones beneath your feet, in the hush of the crowd, gathered in the central plaza, in the way the temple looms like a giant held in place by memory and awe. Teotihuacan doesn't rule with armies. It rules with meaning, carefully crafted, immaculately displayed, and a little terrifying. You're standing at the edge of a public ritual, the kind that's equal parts theater and threat. Everyone is watching. And more importantly, everyone is being watched. Out come the priests, painted from head to toe in symbolic colors, white for bones, red for blood, black for the underworld. They wear massive headdresses that fan out like peacock halos, casting weird shadows across their faces. They don't speak. They don't need to. Their appearance is the message. The crowd parts instinctively. These are the ones who speak for the gods, or maybe as the gods. And when they appear, something always happens. A sacrifice, a declaration, a display. You squint trying to understand what's being said without words. One priest carries a jaguar pelt. Another holds obsidian blades. A third carries a scroll painted with symbols. No alphabet, just power made visible. Symbols of crops, storms, fire, and death. And then the dancers begin. Slow, deliberate steps across the plaza, forming a pattern you've seen before. Circles and spirals. A visual code. If you're literate in their way, not in letters, but in shape and space, you know what's being told. The gods are in charge and they don't forget anything. That's how Teotihuacan kept control. No need for shouting. Just eyes everywhere, murals that don't blink, temples that cast shadows like divine fingers. Symbols on every surface, reminding you where you are and who you serve. Historians still argue how centralized the power was, whether it was a true monarchy, a priestly council, or a rotating elite. But whatever the structure, the result was the same control through awe. Step out of line, and the gods noticed. Not figuratively, literally. You wander through the elite compounds, places you rarely get to enter. The walls here are thick, the paintings cleaner, brighter. There's a mural of a bird swallowing the sun, another of a snake coiled around a mountain. These aren't art for art's sake. They're warnings, beautiful ones. A scribe brushes past you holding a wooden board filled with symbols. You see the face of the storm god, teeth bared, lightning curling from his nostrils. That same god appears carved above a nearby doorway. He doesn't look like he wants you to visit. Symbols repeat like a mantra. Eyes, hearts, fangs, spirals, fire. You realize that this repetition isn't by accident. It's branding. Teotihuacan branded the gods into your bones. Walk anywhere and you see the same patterns. And once you've seen them, you can't unsee them. Even the buildings themselves tell stories. A pyramid isn't just a structure, it's a mountain, a clock, a ladder to the heavens. The number of steps, the orientation, the carvings along the way, they all say something. And if you don't know what it means, that's the point. The priests know, you don't. And that mystery, that's power. You pause near a small plaza where children are practicing the dances. They move in stilted, careful lines, their feet tracing familiar shapes into the dust. One child stumbles, and a teacher snaps something sharp, quick correction. The ritual must be precise. The gods aren't interested in clumsy praise. Quirky fact in Teotihuacan. Entire buildings were constructed with symbolism in mind. Some complexes were laid out to resemble celestial maps. One palace courtyard aligns with the setting sun on the summer solstice because even sunsets are political. You pass a sculpture of a deity you've seen before, the old man with a net on his back. He's often misunderstood. Some say he represents wealth. Others say he's a trap, a warning against greed. Either way, he's grinning at you with teeth too perfect. You look down and notice your own shadow cast long and bent by the temple behind you. It twists along a carving of a serpent, the head now crowned by your silhouette. You step back uneasy. This city doesn't just build fear, it curates it. It knows what to show you, when to show it, how high to build the walls and where to place the eyes. And it knows how to make you feel small over and over until obedience isn't a choice, it's instinct. You end the day watching a final performance. At sunset, dancers wear masks with long fangs and serpent eyes. They move with slow menace, each gesture echoing a myth, a prophecy, a warning. The crowd watches silently. No applause, just acknowledgement. You leave the plaza feeling heavier than when you arrived, not from heat, from meaning. In Teotihuacan, fear isn't loud. It's sacred geometry, silent eyes and murals that know too much. You wake to smoke. Not the soft, curling incense of temple rituals, but thick, sour smoke, choking, frantic. You stagger upright and realize this isn't a ceremony. It's destruction. The temple of the feathered serpent is burning. Not the whole thing, not yet, but enough to change everything. Flames lick the base of its stairs. Ash drifts like black snow. People are shouting, some running, others just standing frozen. And through it all, you feel something deeper. Not chaos. Rebellion. Teotihuacan, this impossibly orderly city, is unraveling. You race through alleyways that once felt like the arteries of the gods. Now they're clogged with smoke bodies and confusion. Shops are abandoned, offerings smashed. Someone's overturned a sacred statue. Its head lies in the dirt, eyes cracked open like it saw this coming. For centuries, this place was unshakable. Its power was encoded in every stone. But nothing lasts forever, not even a city built by geometry and blood. The signs were there if you'd been watching. Crops failing, trade routes drying up, priests asking for more and getting less, people muttering behind closed doors. Historians still argue about the exact cause. Was it famine, a political coup, a class revolt? Some suggest religious reformers tried to dismantle the elite priesthood. Others think the system simply imploded under its own weight. Whatever the truth, it wasn't an outside invasion. The enemy was homegrown. You pass a building with red handprints smeared across its walls. Not paint. A statement, a final message. Inside, the rooms are ransacked. Mural fragments litter the floor. The gods once so terrifyingly present seem strangely absent now. You reach the marketplace. It's empty. Stalls overturned, obsidian blades scattered like broken promises. You see a familiar merchant's figurines smashed underfoot. No one is buying sacred symbols anymore. No one is whispering to the gods. And the fire, it's spreading. You stumble into one of the elite compounds. The walls here were always brighter, better maintained. Now they're charred. Someone scrawled crude symbols over the mural symbols of protest, not prayer. A feathered serpent with its tongue cut out. A priest drawn with empty eyes. It's not just rebellion, it's revenge. Quirky fact archaeological evidence shows that many of the city's central temples and elite residences were deliberately destroyed, burned, smashed, defaced. This wasn't looting. It was targeted. The people knew exactly what to hit, and they hit it hard. You reach the Temple of the Moon. From here you can see the damage more clearly. Not all the city is burning, but enough to know the spell has broken. The Avenue of the Dead, once so perfect, looks crooked now. The geometry no longer comforts. It confines. A small group gathers near you. Survivors. Onlookers. No leaders. No priests. Just people watching the city die. One of them whispers a prayer more out of habit than hope. Another spits on the ground. You wonder what will happen next. If they'll rebuild. if they'll scatter, if they'll bury this place and pretend it never ruled their lives. You remember the tunnels under the temple of the feathered serpent, filled with mercury obsidian carved orbs. Were those meant to impress the gods or to keep secrets hidden? Maybe someone decided the gods didn't deserve secrets anymore. You sit as the sun begins to fall, casting long, broken shadows. The serpent heads along the temple walls, now seem twisted in pain, not power. The great murals, once echoing cosmic balance, now look like cracked dreams. And still, the city remains, not whole, not ruling, but there. The stone doesn't disappear. The walls may crumble, but the outline stays visible from the mountains, the stars from centuries ahead. This isn't just a collapse, it's a pause. You close your eyes, and for a moment you feel what the last citizens might have felt: exhaustion, anger, relief. Because maybe they didn't want to destroy their home. Maybe they wanted to reclaim it from gods that asked too much, from priests who spoke too often, from symbols that no longer served. You open your eyes again. The fire is dying. The crowd is dispersing. No one speaks of rebuilding. And so Teotihuacan slips into silence, not with an enemy's trumpet, but with its own people turning away. It never is. Now the towers fade, the lights dim, the streets empty. The drums and chants of temples past fall silent, replaced by soft wind, the hush of water flowing down memorial walls, the deep breath of cities asleep. You lie back. The sky above is the same sky it's always been over Egypt, over Teotihuacan, over Manhattan. It watches still. And you've walked through centuries, felt sand sting your eyes, obsidian chill your palms, steel reflect the morning sun. You've heard gods whispered in stone, in silence, in sirens. You've seen how people build to make sense of the chaos, to hold the stars, to leave something behind that says we were here. And you've seen how even when those things fall, by fire, by revolt, by time, something always rises. Not the same, but not gone. So let your breath slow. Let the old voices grow quiet. Let the weight of history fall away like sand slipping through fingers. You've traveled far tonight, and you've earned your rest. The cities will keep breathing. The stones will keep whispering. And when the sun rises again, someone will be there to look up to. Remember to begin again. Sleep now. You're safe.